means the house of the sanctuary. We're going to take a deeper look at the music. We're going to look at the instruments. We're going to look at the Levites and the Cohens that are involved in the worship. We're going to see how it relates to us. We're going to look at the heavenly temple and see how what we study here is a pattern of that. So all the things that are done in the heavenly realms are taught or placed in the temple. It didn't completely begin to realize itself until the building of the first temple. So in other words, in the tabernacle, there's a lot of the things that the steps and where they place themselves and how they orient themselves did not come about because many of the Psalms weren't even written yet. Okay? Now, there's probably some of these prayers already there that King David began to incorporate into the things he was writing, but most of that wasn't brought about until the first temple was constructed. All right. What did I just do? There we go. Okay, so let's start off and kind of get a big picture. This is when Solomon dedicated the temple. He writes in 1 Kings chapter 8:28. He goes, "Nevertheless, turn to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, Adonai my God, to listen to the cry and to the prayer which your servant prays before you this day. Let your eyes be open toward this house night and day, toward the place in which you have said, my name shall be there, listening to the prayer which your servant shall pray toward this place." Shema. So listen to the supplication of your servant and your people Israel when they pray toward this place. Hear in heaven your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. Now, why Solomon is dedicating this temple, and in his prayer is that all the prayers that are going to be brought, all the singing and prayers that are going to be done in the house, on the Temple Mount, he's saying that you hear these prayers, and they allow us to draw near to you. And so from this place, we, Israel, can now communicate directly with you. So some of the things we're talking about today are the sources. The performance of the Psalms of the temple is mentioned in the Mishnah. Reflects actual practice dating back to the late Second Temple period. The Tamid 7:5, Midot 2:5, Sukkot 5:4, Pesachim 5:7, and Tanit 4:5. These are all coming from the Mishnah. Why are we using the Mishnah for one of the main sources? Is because they actually recorded exactly the responsibilities of the singers, the musicians, and the Levites, the shofars that were blown, how many shofar were blown, exactly what shofar was blown. All that's recorded in the Mishnah, and so when you go through this, you'll see this. So let's start off with a couple things to know. We're going to talk about the morning service. Does anybody know what the name of the morning service is called? Shacharis or Shacharit? Okay, either one. Shacharit. So in the morning service, there's going to be some psalms that are going to be they're going to go through, and so I'm going to show you here in a few minutes. But in Psalms, there appears to be in the morning service. It's called the Pesukei Dezimra. This is Psalms 30, 100, 145, and 150. These are praises that are done during the morning service. So my teacher Joseph Good related how that they would spend 6 months practicing over and over the music and the prayers and the worship music was practiced so much. So when they got to a actual feast, it was rehearsed so many times. It was done orchestrated. It was a perfect orchestration of the music. And so in the morning service, part of that practice and dress rehearsal was done on a daily basis. And so in the morning service, they would sing and play Psalms 30, 100, 145, 150. Okay? Now, Psalms 145, commonly referred to as Ashri. Does anybody know what the Ashri is? The Ashri is important because this is part of the standing prayers. The 18 standing prayers we're talking about is the Ashri. And there's it says it reads these 3 times every day. Once in the Shacharit is part of the Pesukei Dezimra. And there's a morning service, and the Psalms that were read there is mentioned once, along with Psalms 20 is part of the morning's concluding prayers, and once at the start of the afternoon service. Now I'm going to give you all the different Psalms on every day. I'm going to show you how they're going to use. Now, on festival days and Sabbaths, instead of concluding the morning service, it precedes the Musaf service. And they go from the morning service right into the Musaf, or the mid-afternoon service. So, remember, just as there was 3 times of prayer, right, Paul? There was we had the morning prayer, which is at what time? What hour is that? It was at 9 o'clock. The third hour, which is 9 a.m. And then you had in the 6th hour, which is noon. And then in the 9th hour, which was when they did the evening service, that would begin it. So initially they just had the 2 services, then they added the 3rd service in the Second Temple period. All right, in Psalms 95 through 99, Psalms 29, Psalms 92 and 93, along with some later readings, comprise the introduction of what's called the Kabbalah Shabbat to the Friday night service. So on the Friday night service, these would be in the temple. These would be the things that they would sing, and the prayers they would say would be these psalms right here. Traditionally, a different psalm for the day, or it's called Shir Shel Yom, is read after the morning service each day of the week, and we're going to go into each one of them. So, for example, on the first day of the week, you have Psalm 24. On the second day of the week, you have Psalm 48. Third day, 82, etc., etc., etc. And then finally, on Rosh Chodesh, on the new moon celebration, they would read Psalm 27. It's recited twice daily following the morning and evening services. So what I'm talking about here is you would have your standard morning and evening service, right? But then when you have a special time like a new moon celebration, they would add on top of an additional time period onto that service, and new psalms were brought in and sung during those periods of time. On Yom Kippur, you would always read Psalms 130 along with the 2 services. On the new moon celebration, you had Psalms 81, and on the dedication of the temple, Psalms 30 for the dedication. So these are all the psalms that you're going to see read throughout the traditional daily services. Okay? So why is this important? Why is music important to our God? Why did He make this so integrated into the service? Keep in mind that every one of the psalms that David wrote, the things and the songwriters write, every single one is inspired by the Holy Spirit. The Ruach HaKodesh inspired every single one of these. So everything came about on the lips of David that we read in the Psalms came through the Holy Spirit. So when that's added to the service, it's the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. And so when we read these next 2 verses, you understand the effectiveness of why this was so important. So let's start in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 16. It says, "Let our Lord know, command thy servants which are before thee to seek out a man who is cunning player on an harp." In other words, who can play the harp. "And it shall come to pass when the evil spirit from God is upon thee, that he shall play with his hand, and that shall be well." In other words, when this evil spirit comes upon him, that's been sent upon a person, this is a reference actually to Saul, that when he began playing this psalm and singing and playing with the harp, the evil spirit would leave. Okay? Real important, because when we understand worship, we understand how powerful this is. 1 Samuel 16:23 says, "And it came to pass when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul," this is another way that's kind of saying the same thing, was upon Saul, that David took a harp and played with his hands, so Saul was refreshed and was well. Listen to this, "and the evil spirit departed from him." Okay? So in this same chapter, he's basically relating that when you see an unclean spirit come upon somebody, it actually shows wisdom to begin to play music and singing the psalms upon that person, because the evil spirit or the unclean spirit will flee from something that's come from the Holy Spirit. And it's really important. And I never realized this, how important it is. This is why many people can have discussions about this. But I believe that all music has a certain tone that's playing on, certain frequencies that's being played on. I think that's important. And I believe that a lot of times, if those frequencies, like some people say we can have heavy metal can be part of Christian music, stuff like that. I don't believe that. Because I think that the frequencies do not create the environment where unclean spirits drive out. It's got to be at certain frequencies that it will drive out. And these were written by the Holy Spirit and given to David and Asaph and others so they can play these in the future. Now, let's look at this so you can kind of understand. This is the temple, and what I want to show you is exactly where the musicians and the singers, where they would stand. But just as an example here, if you look back at this picture, in area number 9, that's called what? The court of the women. Okay, this is the court of the women. When you get into the area number 8, there's a gate there called Nicanor Gate, and in that area, okay, it's like a threshold area. It's called the court of Israel. When you go to number 7, what is number 7 right there? That's the Mizbech, or the altar. Okay, and then you go back to number 4. You're in the holy place where you have the menorah. You get number 3, Number 2, that's all where the altar of incense is. And then back in number 1, you have the very presence of God where the Ark of the Covenant is. And so when you start from 13 and you begin going where? From east to west, you get closer to the presence of God. So as Israel would come into his house, okay, in the area of number 8, that's where the Levitical choir would stand and play music. And I'm going to show you here how in a few minutes that because it's kind of a threshold area, there's walls here, and there's walls here, and they're sitting some on the steps here, and some here. What they would do is they would have, when they're seeing here, they would have a flag man. They would flag, so when a drink offering was placed on the side of the altar, a flag would go up and music would be played in conjunction with this. So it was all orchestrated in a perfect way. So when you go back and look at this map, each thing had a function and a purpose as you go through this. Pretty interesting. And we're going to go back to this here in a second. All right, so let's look at where this basically is based on. I'm not spending a lot of time on it, but I will tell you that there over and over and over and again, we're going to see how the heavenly temple has a blueprint that was given to David, and then that was put in the temple. And everything we see in the heavenly realm was placed in the earthly realm. So as an example, we read in Ezekiel 28:13. Now, this verse is translated or understood in a couple different ways. We'll kind of go into those 2 different understandings, but it's in a reference to Lucifer, or Satan. Lucifer, because that was his name when he was still in the heavenly realm. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. Now listen to what he's talking about. Every precious stone was your covering. You had ruby, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and emerald. Choose your settings. There's 9 stones there. Okay. Now, what does the 9 stones represent in the New Testament? For the Spirit, right? There's 9 for the fruit of the Spirit. Okay. 9 settings in the stones. In that day you were created, they were prepared, you were an anointed guardian and cherub. Okay? What sits over the Ark of the Covenant? 2 cherubs, or guardian cherubs, that sits over it. Okay? So he was one of those guardian cherubs. I placed you on the holy mountain of God, you walked among the stones of fire. Alright, so there is an understanding here that he acted as a high priest in the function of a high priest, or in the concept of a high priest in the heavenly realm. It went to his head. He became corrupted, like we've seen other high priests like Caiaphas did. He became corrupted, and he was cast away. Okay. Now, if you look right there where it says your settings and your sockets of workmanship of gold, some of your translations will say a workmanship of timbrel. Okay, and that word timbrel, translated in the King James Version, is basically a musical instrument. It's like pipes. Okay, like you find it in an organ. So there's 2 understandings. One, that he played the role of a high priest, and he also played a role of a musician in the heavenly realm. Okay, he had kind of 2 roles. And so you see how he went to his head, got corrupted, and then he had to be cast out from his position. Now we read in Revelations 5:8 and 15:2. These are 2 verses that give an understanding of what's going on in the heavenly realm. It says, and when he had taken a scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each holding a harp, and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. 15:2 kind of further describes what's going on. It says, and I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire, and also those who conquered the beast and the image and the number of its name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. And each one of them, they're playing music before the throne, and they're singing. And we see in Revelation, they sing, Holy, holy, holy is God Almighty. There's several times where they do, like the Song of Moses is sang. In one version, I think in 15 is where they talk about the Song of Moses being sung in the heavenly realm. So there's music inspired through the Holy Spirit in the heavenly realm. There's incense associated with it. You have high priests. You have all these things that you find in the heavenly realm is duplicated in the earthly realms. Okay, it's tied in together. All right, so in the heavenly temple, we know that Yushua is what? He's our high priest. Okay, now there are those who bring incense. To see in the book of Revelations that it references that an angel comes before the Lord and he pours out incense. So there's something that's done there as well in the book of Revelations. There are those who say prayers, songs, play musical instruments. Every aspect was established in the heavenly realm would be duplicated in the earthly temple. Worship, which includes praise, prayers, and music, are crucial to us being able to draw near our God. Not only is it just crucial for us to draw near. It's important that anything unclean is cast away from the presence of God, and music is associated with that. His music, what he designs. All right, so let's go look at some stuff they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. In one of the Dead Sea Scrolls called 11QP, okay, they found this, which reads the following. The 11QP song says, a collection of 27 lines 4 through 7, and he wrote, they find 3,600 songs to sing before the altar accompanying the daily perpetual burnt offering. So 3,600 songs that were played in the temple, okay? And they have a collection of all that. Now, for the Sabbath, on the Sabbath day, they had 52 songs that they had a collection of those songs. Now, we record, in the Psalms, we record a bunch of them, but there's so much more we don't even know that was being used. On the new moon celebrations and on festival days, they had an additional 30 songs. And they say the total songs that are composed were 446 songs on other days, in not necessarily in those specific days, for a total sum of 4,050 songs that were sung and played inside the temple area. So keep in mind, these musicians had to be very good. What's the average musician? How many songs do you think the average musician knows? 10? Cherry says 10. You say 50, 60. Here we got 4,000 songs. That's pretty amazing. It's very amazing. I think the website's called, I'll find it before we get out of here, but what's important about it is the way the Hebrew language is written. How many know this? That for every letter in the Hebrew alphabet, for alphabet, you've got a number, right? But you also have a musical note. So, for example, Aleph may be the note of C, the Bet may be a B, the G would be Dalet, etc., etc., etc. So you could take every single, you could take an entire, let's take, for example, Psalm 23, and I'm going to play this for you later so you can hear this. Psalm 23 composed of music is beautiful. Just instrumental music, and they've taken every Hebrew letter and they play it. And it's, I mean, you can feel the sense of worship when you hear it, okay? Just in the instrumental side of it. All right, 2 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 11. So, who remembers the sons of Korah? Do you know that after the temple got set in place and they were no longer responsible for breaking it down and set it up, they're responsible, but they now fell into working as musicians. So they joined the sons of Mari, which was another clan of Levites who were the singers and the musicians, and they became part of that. And as we read here in 2 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 11, and it came to pass when the Kohanim came out of their holy place, for all the Kohanim they were present had consecrated themselves with regard to their divisions. And how many cohorts or divisions are there? So you remember? 24. 24 cohorts, okay? So, for example, Zechariah, in Luke chapter 1 and 2, he was in part of the 10th cohort, okay? So we know that from the first of Aviv, you could figure out exactly when Zechariah was in the temple, placing the altar of incense, when he became mute. We can tell exactly the time of the year if we just go back and find out, because the cohort that he was part of, okay? Verse 12, now all the Levite singers, Asaph, now did anybody know where that name comes from? Okay, this is a clan. And we see it written all through the Psalms, the name Asaph, the composer, the songwriter was the name Asaph, right? It's a clan. Heman, Yedutun, and their sons and their relatives dressed finely with the cymbals. Excuse me, they had cymbals, harps, lyres, were standing in the east of the altar, and with them were 120 Kohens, or Kohanim, blowing trumpets. Okay, and these are shofars. Now, in certain specific feasts, they could only blow the ram's horns. Other times, they could use other forms of horns. And sometimes it was a silver horn that would be blown. But in special feast time frames, you would have 120 Kohanim blowing trumpets in conjunction with all the musical instruments playing at the same time. Okay? Verse 13 of 2 Chronicles 5, I reread. Then it came to pass when the trumpeters and the singers joined as one to extol and praise Adonai, and with the sound of the trumpets, the cymbals, and the musical instruments, and the praise of Adonai, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever, grew louder, and the temple of the house of Adonai was filled with a cloud. The Kohanim could not stand to minister because of that cloud, for the glory of Adonai filled the house of God. So let's go back to our picture. All right, so that's our temple, right? And we can look there. You see where it's in the areas 1, 2, 3, and 4, we had the presence of God. And as they began playing their music, where are they standing? They're number 8, okay? And the presence of God was so strong that it forced them from their place in number 8 to where the rest of Israel was in 9, 10, and 11. Okay? You see that? So when Solomon dedicates the temple, he says his prayer, and then they begin playing the music all at once. The presence of God just completely consumes that whole massive structure there. And think about it. All along around that area, they had built, porticos, and you had all your guests, emissaries and ambassadors and dignitaries from all over the known world had come to the dedication of this temple. And they're sitting there and they hear the music, they hear the prayers, they see the presence of God, they see people prostrating themselves before God. I think Queen of Sheba was blown away by this. Every one of them was. Unfortunately, it didn't happen every day, because if it happened every day, there would have been no false worship. Okay? But one of the things the key here is with music, the presence of God comes and unclean spirits flee. They kind of go in conjunction. This is why it's so important for us to continue to worship before we study, and not just study for the sake of study. I have found personally, on a personal note, there's times when I'm stuck studying, so I'll put praise and worship music and I'll sing it, and it's like my mind will clear, and then I began to understand and study a lot more. Things began to stick, and just like you have a greater comprehension, greater understanding, and things become to fall into place. And so I would recommend that whenever you do this, always do praise worship. When you're trying to read something, you're like, you know what, I'm just not getting it. Start doing that and watch what happens. Okay? All right, so let's look at, this is from the Seder Moed. These are from the Mishnah. Sukkah chapter 5, Mishnah 5. All right, and as we go through this, in 5:4a, it says, the pious men and wonder workers would dance before them with flaming torches in their hand. B. And they would sing before them songs and praises. Now, what we're reading to you is basically when they set this whole thing up again. When they go back and the temple's in place and they begin setting the structure up. Where they're going to go back to, and to have this understanding, they're going to go back to the Mishnah and they're going to read through it and they're going to set their order according to the Mishnah. So what I'm reading you here is what's going to happen in the near future. Pious men would be the elders, or these are people that are trusted, the elders of the community, some of what we call the saints, or important people within the congregation. Okay? The word pious means elder or saint or of great character.
Right.
Above reproach. Yeah. And the Levites beyond counting played on, listen to this, and the Levites beyond counting, they couldn't even count them, what they said here in the Mishnah, played on harps, lyres, cymbals, trumpets, and other musical instruments. They would do it standing, and as they played on the 15 steps which would go down from the Israelites' court to the women's court. So let's go back and look at that. So let's go back and see our picture, one back here. All right, so you see where number 8 is? So in that threshold of number 8, as you went into the court of women, there's 15 steps as you went up there. And they would array themselves. You would have on one side, you would have the musicians, and on the other side, you would have the singers. And then the rest of Israel would be out there in prayer. And a couple years ago, we were in Orlando, and we did a rehearsal of this. We did prayers. We had a high priest. We did the whole ceremony of a burnt offering. And we had the priest that was going to do the offering. We had musicians, and then we had the rest of us out there. And we did, there's certain prayers where you bend your knee and you prostrate yourself before the Lord during these things. And that would happen in the court, and where you see that number 9 there. It's pretty amazing when you see how all this thing is orchestrated together. And then what you'll do is you'll go. See, we don't have the luxury of watching the ceremony, okay? But if you go back and see the ceremony in place, and then you go look at all these false religions, you'll see how much they've imitated so much elements of this. It'll blow you away, and in your mind you'll think, well, I wonder where they got that, or do we copy that? See, this is where people's confusion comes in, because we think it's been copied, but the truth is that these false worship copied what was done in the Holy Temple. Okay, number D, standing as they played on the 15 steps which they go down from the Israelites' court to the women's court, corresponding to the 15 songs of ascent. And remember that. One of my favorites is Psalms 126, Shir HaMalot. That's one of the songs we sing here sometimes, and that's one of the songs of ascent. And they do these same things when you come up. Remember we talked, you come from out the water gate through the pool of Shiloah. You come up there and you're going up, and you remember Peter and John said, silver and gold I have none. All right, well, when he's going up those steps, coming up toward the royal portico and going to go through the Huldah gates, when he's getting ready to go into it, as they go up, they'll come up one step, two steps, and they'll sing a song of ascents. They'll take another step and say another song of ascents. And they'll do this all the way until they get into the Huldah gate. They'll go through, which is, remember the double and the triple gate? They'll go through the triple gate, and they'll come into it, go up to the right, get up into Solomon's portico, and then they'll come down into the court of the women, out of the court of Israel. That path, right, as they're going up, they'll say these songs of ascent. The same thing happens right here, these 15 songs of ascent. On these, Levites stand with their instruments and sing their songs. And two priests stood at the upper gate, which goes down from the Israelites' court to the women's court, with two trumpets in their hands. In H, we see here. Now, this is when the cock crowed. Now, what is that cock crows? The rooster crows. What is that? Does anybody remember?
The Yushua, not Yushua, but after Peter denied 3 times.
Yeah, so this is a nickname for the crier. The crier. So the crier is called the rooster crow. He'll crow, right? He'll call out. And it says when the crier, when he sounds a sustained and quavering and a sustained note. So in other words, he goes. If you remember when Kent blows a shofar, you go a blast like boo, right? Terubah. And then you have the tekiah, and then you go da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Those are the blasts. You hear a doo, and that's what you'll hear from the crier. Okay? Those are the sounds that you'll see, and that'll start the process. And then when they got to the 10th step, they sounded a sustained and wavering or quavering, a sustained blast to the shofar. When they reached the courtyard, they sounded a sustained and quavering and a sustained blast to the shofar. They went on to sounding the shofar in a sustained blast until they reached the gate, which is the Nicanor gate, and that leads out to the east. When they reach the gate, which goes out toward the east, they turn around toward the west. Now, what we're describing here in the Mishnah is what got into the temple and what got false worship in here, and what really, I'm going to read you the scripture verse, but they're stating something that went wrong here. But before I read that, we're going to read what they were describing. And they said, our fathers who were in the place turned with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they worship the sun toward the east. But as to us, our eyes are to the Lord, Rabbi Judah says. They said it a second time, we belong to the Lord, our eyes are toward the Lord. Okay, so what are they saying here, right? So let's say they're looking from the east to the west, okay? This being the Holy of Holies. Let's say where you're there, Vicky, that would be the Nicanor gate, and when that opens up, that's where the 15 steps are, right? Well, the musicians would stand and look to the east, but the people would look to the west, right? They're looking toward the Holy of Holies. Well, what they did in this time, I'm going to let's go read this verse here in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 13. This is what they did. He said further to me, son Ezekiel, you'll see greater abominations that they are doing. He brought me to the door of the gate of Adonai's house, which was toward the north. Behold, the women that sat there weeping for Tammuz, he said to me, have you seen this, son of man? You will again see even greater abominations with these. Then what does he talk about? The worship of Tammuz was mother goddess worship, okay? And so on the north side, so this would be near the house of the spark, okay? And you have a gate that goes into that area. And in that area, they placed a Asherah pole. The house of Israel did. The 10 tribes, they placed an Asherah pole, and then they were facing toward the north, and they were weeping for Tammuz. Okay, so he's saying you're going to see this abomination. It's messed up. But I got something that's even worse than that. And then he tells him 16. So he brought me into the inner court of Adonai's house. Behold, at the door of the temple of Adonai, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men. So instead of these men, what they did is they took over the music and the worship. And they had to do the same music and the same worship, but this time, instead of facing toward the Holy of Holies, right, they turned their backs on God and faced the sun worship. And so the Levites continued doing their job, but these men did abominations and they turned their backs toward him. Okay? So I wish I had this picture, but I have a picture that it shows you several hundred Muslims on the Temple Mount with their backs to the Dome of the Rock, facing toward Mecca. All right, in the same manner that these 25 men were doing. Okay, so there's a set worship that's in place, but false worship tries to sneak inside of it and corrupt it. That's what we're talking about here. All right, 5.5a. Let's continue in the Mishnah. They sound no fewer than 21 notes in the temple, and they do not sound more than 48. Okay, so the string instruments would play 21 notes in part of their composed music. And every day there was 21 blasts on the shofar, a ram's horn blown on set occasions in the temple and the synagogue worship. And see, 3 at the opening of the gates, 9 at the offering of the daily whole offerings in the morning, 9 at the offering of the daily whole offerings in the evening, and on the day in which the additional offering is made, they would add another 9 more. And on the eve of the Shabbat, they would add 6 more. So what is he saying? Okay, what's the mission described? There was such an orchestrated thing that we don't really realize it. But let's go to verse 5 of chapter 1. Let's start there. In the days of Herod, king of Judah, there was a Cohen named Zechariah from the priestly division of Abijah. Remember I told you how they knew that the Abijah was in the 10th cohort, because in the Mishnah it specifically states the Abijah, or Abiyah, they were the 10th cohort. So now we know exactly the time of the year that he was when this happens. Okay. Now Elizabeth and his wife were from the daughters of Aaron. Together they were righteous before Adonai, walking without fault in all his commandments and instructions. But they were childless because Elizabeth was barren and both of them were elderly. Now, when they say elderly, he couldn't have been more than 50 years old. Okay? So keep in mind, I would be called elderly this year based on this translation. Now, it happened to be Zechariah's time to serve as a Cohen before Adonai in the order of his division. According to the custom of the priestly office, it became his lot to enter the holy place of Adonai to burn incense. And the whole crowd of people, this is what you follow here. So let's go back to our picture. All right. So we got thousands of people in the area of number 9. Okay? And Solomon's portico, which would be running around, you see where that number 13 is? It would run basically north and south. And so up on the higher levels, you're going to see all these people coming up to the edge and looking toward this time. So they're all looking toward into 11, 9, 8, 4, 3, 2, 1. They're looking in that direction. Okay? So according to the customs of the priest's office, it became his lot to enter the holy place Adonai to burn incense. So he was going to come in from number 5, go up those steps, go into where it sees number 4, and go up to number 4, and that's where Gabriel, the angel, is going to meet him right there. And Gabriel, you're going to see, is going to be on the right, just to the right of him. Okay? And it became his lot to enter the holy place of Adonai to burn incense. And the whole crowd of people, listen to this, the whole crowd of people were praying outside at the hour of incense burning. What hour was this? Okay? Remember, there's two periods where they're going to do this. And they're going to correspond with the 2 burnt offerings on the daily burnt offerings. You have one in what hour? In the 3rd hour is the first burnt offering. And you have the second burnt offering in the what? In the 9th hour. And in each time, there's incense is going to be burned both these times. So Zechariah is going to be corresponding. He's probably done it in the morning. He's going to do it in the evening as well. So at one of those 2 times, he's coming in there. Now the people all know the Psalms. They know the prayers are going to be said because they know the day of the week. And I'm going to show you exactly the day and the Psalms that they're going to be saying because it corresponds to the day they're going to do this. And it says, and the whole crowd of people were praying outside at the hour of incense burning, and an angel of Adonai appeared to him standing at the right side of the altar of incense. Okay, so to the right side. See where the number 4 is? Be right to the right side as he's looking toward the Holy of Holies. And Zechariah was in turmoil when he saw an angel, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah," and notice why, in this case, Zechariah cannot drop to his knees. He has to hang on to every incense. Because there's a penalty for the one. He cannot drop one of those, because they're like little resins. And he cannot even drop one of them. So they come in a container. He takes the trophy, he's going to take it, and he's going to put it on the altar, and he's got to step back. So he's getting ready to do this, and here comes an angel, and he can't drop one, because each one of those resins represents a prayer of the people out there praying in the court, number 9. Okay? So this is very important. So as shocked as he was, he had to still maintain his composure. It says in verse 13, "But the angel says, 'Do not be afraid, Zechariah, because your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will give birth to your son, and you will name him John. And when you have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, he will be great before Adonai, that he should not drink wine and intoxicating beverages,'" Nazarite vow. "But he will be filled with the Ruach HaKodesh," the Holy Spirit, "just out of his mother's womb. Now many of the children of Israel will turn to Adonai their God, and he will go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient ones to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready for Adonai a prepared people." Zechariah said to the angel, "How will I know this for certain? I'm an old man, and my wife is well advanced in age." And speaking to him, the angel declared, "I am Gabriel, the one standing in God's presence. I was commissioned to tell you and proclaim to you this good news. So look, you will be silent and powerless to speak until the day these things happen, since you do not believe my words, which you will be fulfilled in their time." Now, this is important here. The people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering about this long delay in the holy place. Now, what happened? Remember, all this is so choreographed that you have music, you have instrumental music going on, you have the singing, you have the prayers, all it's in sync. It's all in sync. Well, they come to the end of their songs, and he still hasn't come out. And so there's this giant pause that you don't see, because everything's so choreographed. And this is what the shock, and you can tell people are becoming uncomfortable the more time goes, because in the back of their mind, all they think is Abihu and Nadab, because that's been beat in their head for so many generations. You don't mess with the presence of God. And so they're still thinking, we've lost him. We lost him. And then there's probably other priests that are going, okay, when do we go in and figure this out? When do we get him out? So all this stuff is going on because it's so choreographed. That's why they were standing and silent, waiting for this to take place. All right, so let's go back. Too far. All right, I think that's it. Yes. So indeed, on the days, in the eve of the Sabbath, they would go add 6 more. Let's go to the next one. On the eve of the Sabbath, which came during the festival, there were 48 in all. 3 for the opening of the gates, 3 for the upper gates, 3 for the lower gates, and for the drawing of the water, 3 for... So each part of the ceremony, what's important, what you're reading here, each part of the ceremony, where it be drawing the water that would be used in the copper basin, everything had trumpet blasts that choreographed what was going to happen. So you would have priests and Levites would go to their station, and when it was their time, they would do the appropriate blast, and then that would give signal to exactly what to do at those specific times. And this is quoted in Neusner as he goes through and studies the Mishnah and all the stuff that we read here. Now, just to get an idea of what you're looking at here, so you would have these steps, okay, as you come up here. And in this area here, it's hard to explain, but just to get an idea, you see that toward the top here, up here at the top, right here, you see that little square area? Okay, that's the mizbech, that's the altar, okay? And then you see what's called a chayil, and then you have the soreg that separates, but you're going to ascend to another level, and then when you go past the altar, you've got another set of steps, 14, before you go into the holy place, okay? You keep working your way back past these columns here, and you come into a threshold area. It's in that threshold area that's the court of Israel, where the singers and the musicians are. But this kind of gives you an eye view. If you're bringing the slaughter, I just want to show you here, if you're slaughtering an animal for the burnt offering, you're going to be standing right about here, Okay? You're going to go up, you're going to come from the tables or from where you sacrifice. You're going to go up that stairs and you're going to come to the altar, and there's 8 pieces of the burnt offering, and each piece, they'll have one Levite will have a piece, and they'll throw that upon the top of the altar. All that's choreographed to music and to songs that are being read and sang outside. Okay, each thing. And you're going to see as I read here how this goes about. So we'll look at this here. The platform of the Levitical choir was on the edge of the court of Israel. Now here the Levites would sing daily songs, while the wine libation was taking place at the completion of the Tamid offering. What's the Tamid offering? That's the morning burnt offering that was taking place. Now listen to this. This is Mishnah Tamid 7:3. When the high priest wants to burn the offerings, he would go up on the ramp with the prefect at the right. When he reached the halfway point of the ramp, the prefect would take him by the right hand and they would let him up. So basically, you want to stay with me here. They would come out here and they would walk up here and they would come to a ramp. And he would have his assistant here and he would grab the guy's arm and they would go up the ramp. Okay? And while that's happening, there's a guy, probably where Gunner is, and he's a flag man. Okay? And he's flagging exactly what to do for the choir, and they're watching him because there's a director and he's watching the flag guy. There's another guy with a drink offering, and he pours the drink offering on the side of the altar while they're going up. Now there's prayers that are being recited at this moment, okay, as he's going up. And they march together and sing, just as a soldier would march as they're going up this ramp. When he gets to the top of it, they prepare the burnt offerings. It's already been prepared and it's already going, right? And over there, coming right, you'll see here, they're going to come, the 8 men who've taken the pieces, and they're going to walk in this direction, and they're going to start throwing it on top of the ramp. And then they're going to take each piece and place it on the pile. And then it's going to be one piece after another. It's going to be done. All while there's music and songs going on in sync all together. All right, so let's keep going reading here. It says, the first of the 9 priests handed him the head of the hind leg, and he laid his hands on them and tossed them into the altar fire. The second handed over to the first of the 2 forelegs. He gives them to the high priest, and he lays hands on them, and he tossed them into the altar fire. The second departed, going on his way, and so did the hand over to him all the rest of the limbs. And as he lays his hands on them, he tosses them. And see, normally the high priest likes to do this, but not always. He will use, sometimes an assistant will be used during all the other offerings. But for the burnt offerings, usually the high priest wants to be involved in this, right? Now, as he lays hands on them and tosses them into the altar fire, and when he wants, he lays on hands, but others throw the pieces into the fire. He comes then to walk around the altar toward the right to the southwestern corner. From what point does he begin? To the southwestern corner, then the northwestern one, northwestern to the southwestern. What is he saying? So you go back here to the altar over there, and they each have to do something at certain corners because everything's choreographed part of the burnt offering. So they'll go to one side, then the other side, then the other side, each one at a time. Okay. Now we just thought, you think this is they just put an animal on top of an altar. Oh no, this is there's so much detail into it because everything has to be done in a way, in a perfect way. All right. So then he gives. So let's keep going to the next one. Okay. Then they gave. Now here they go. So then they gave him wine to pour out. Now, did they drink any wine in this area? Why not? Because a command was made after what happened to Abihu and Nadab that no wine could be drank whatsoever